Emma Guy was a battler. From a difficult and unpromising childhood in the crowded suburbs of London to the largely unpopulated rural environment of colonial New Zealand, through losing her father when still a child to burying 3 of her own children, coping with losses through fires and bankruptcy, Emma showed the resilience to persist, to raise a family, and to help transform society. Stay with us as we explore the story of Emma Guy, discover the massive changes in her life, the challenges, and her contribution to family and her participation in wider societal changes. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up, and if you like the content and want more, hit the subscribe button and tap that notification bell. Emma Lydia Guy entered the world in London in 1837 at the beginning of Queen Victoria's reign. She was baptised that spring at St Mark the Evangelist in Clerkenwell, the daughter of Edward Guy, a watchmaker, and his wife Harriet. Clerkenwell and Islington, where Emma spent her childhood, were crowded districts of workshops, small houses and busy streets. Skilled tradesmen worked long hours in cramped premises. Families lived close together, and life could change quickly. Emma learned that early. When she was about 11 years old, her father died. The household was left in the care of her mother, Harriet. Like many widows of the time, Harriet continued raising her children with limited resources and little security. Emma grew up in that household, in streets that were familiar but not always stable. By her early 20s, Emma was ready to begin a household of her own. In 1861, she married Charles Lee Wildbohr, a farrier journeyman and widower. The marriage took place in Islington, with Emma's mother present as witness. Their early married life followed the pattern of many working families. Charles' trade took them where work could be found, and over the next decade the family lived in parts of London and Kent. Children arrived quickly, and the household grew. But the family also faced the grief that touched so many Victorian homes. 2 young daughters died in childhood. Such losses were tragically common, yet each one was deeply personal. For Emma, motherhood included the joy of raising children and the sorrow of burying them. By the early 1870s, Emma and Charles had 3 surviving children. At that point, they made a decision that would reshape the course of their lives. In 1874, the family left England for New Zealand. They sailed from London aboard the Euterpe under an assisted migration scheme. The New Zealand government subsidised passages for families willing to settle in the colony, and the Wildbohrs qualified for the programme. The voyage lasted 4 months, somewhat longer than the average. For families travelling in steerage, the journey was demanding. Passengers slept in narrow bunks below deck and shared crowded living spaces. Ventilation could be poor. Storms sometimes kept people below for days. Washing was basic, and food was issued in regulated rations. Parents like Emma carried the responsibility of keeping family life functioning in these conditions, supervising children, cooking, cleaning, and managing daily routines in a confined space. For the children, the experience was different. There was boredom and seasickness certainly, but also curiosity about the strange floating world around them. When the Euterpe reached Wellington in August 1874, the family had travelled halfway around the globe, and from Wellington they continued north into the Manawatū Rangitiki district, a region still in the early stages of European settlement. The landscape Emma encountered there must have felt vastly different from the streets of London. Roads were rough, towns were young, and neighbours were often miles apart. Yet these settlements were also places of opportunity. Families were building new communities from the ground up. Within a few years, the wild boars were living around Marton and Sandon. Emma soon appeared in local records, not just as a resident, but as someone actively involved in the life of the district. In 1876, she was elected secretary of a local lodge of the International Order of Good Templars, a temperance organisation. The role placed her at the centre of a voluntary society that promoted sobriety, mutual support, and moral reform. Temperance organisations were among the few public bodies in which women could fully participate. Women could vote in meetings, hold office, and help organise community activity. For many women, these societies provided their first experience of structured public engagement. Emma's election shows that she had already become a trusted figure within the small community around her. But the years that followed brought both growth and hardship. Another child was born and died only days later. Tragedy was still part of life, even in a new land. Economic challenges also appeared. At one point, the smithy run by Charles Wildboar was destroyed by fire, a disaster that led to bankruptcy soon afterwards. In settlements where buildings were largely wooden and equipment difficult to replace, fire could wipe out a livelihood overnight. The wild boars rebuilt and continued. More children were born, and the family moved within the district before eventually settling at Taonui near Fielding. The 1880s were difficult years. Another fire destroyed a cottage associated with the family. Then, in 1887, Charles became involved in a violent altercation that led to a conviction for assault and a sentence of 9 months hard labour. During that time, Emma carried the full responsibility of the household. With several children still at home, she maintained family life while her husband was imprisoned. The records do not describe those months in detail, but they remind us that colonial life required resilience, especially from women who kept families functioning through uncertain times. By the early 1890s, Emma had been living in the Manawatū district for nearly 2 decades. The region had grown steadily, and communities had become more established. It was also a time of political change. Across New Zealand, a movement was gathering strength. Women were campaigning for the right to vote in parliamentary elections. Petitions circulated throughout the country, collecting thousands of signatures. Emma added her name to the petition. Her signatures appear in the campaigns that culminated in the Electoral Act of 1893, the law that made New Zealand the first self-governing country in the world to grant women the vote. For Emma, signing the petition was not simply symbolic. In the years that followed, she appeared regularly on electoral rolls for her district, recorded under the occupation domestic duties. The rolls show that she continued registering as a voter for many years. It is a quiet record of civic participation, but a significant one. Emma was among the first generation of women anywhere in the world to take part in national elections. By the early 20th century, she had lived in the Manawatū for more than 30 years. The scattered settlements of the 1870s had become established farming communities. Children had grown up, families had expanded, and the district had developed into a stable rural society. In June 1916, Emma's husband Charles died after many decades of marriage. Only a few months later, Emma prepared her own will. The document reflects the practical realities of family life. A son who had cared for his parents in their later years received the main portion of the estate, while other children were noted as having already received assistance during their father's lifetime. Later that year, Emma's life ended unexpectedly. While working in her kitchen, her clothing caught fire from an oil stove. She managed to reach the path outside before collapsing. Neighbours who saw smoke coming from the house found her there and were able to prevent the building from burning down. But Emma died from the injuries she had sustained. A coroner ruled her death accidental. She was buried at Bunnythorpe Cemetery in November 1916. Emma Lydia Wildbore's life spanned almost 80 years. She was born in the crowded streets of Victorian London and spent most of her adult life in the rural settlements of colonial New Zealand. Her life included loss, migration, financial uncertainty, and the everyday work of raising a large family. Yet the surviving records also show a woman who engaged with her community, held office in a voluntary society, and added her voice to the movement that secured the vote for women. Emma did not leave letters or diaries. Instead, her life is traced through parish registers, petitions, electoral rolls, and local newspapers. Taken together, these records reveal a life that helped shape both family and community, quietly, steadily, and across two very different worlds. One final thought about the research behind Emma's story. When we trace family history, women often disappear in the records. They appear at birth, marriage, and death, but much of their life in between is hard to see. Emma's story shows how other kinds of documents can help fill that gap. In her case, Temperance Society records, the Women's Suffrage Petition, and electoral rolls all reveal moments where she appears in her own right, not just as someone's wife or daughter. Those records show her participating in community life, supporting the campaign for women's voting rights, and then exercising that right for many years afterwards. For family historians, they are a reminder that the lives of women often appear most clearly in civic and social records. Petitions, organisations, electoral rolls, community societies, and local newspapers can all bring women back into view in the historical record.